Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. Got the spooky lighting right now on this video, some shadows and whatnot. I'm going to read this article today. Not sure how long it is, but I liked the title. I don't know if I might get to another article, but we'll dive in with this one. From September 26, 2019, The Illusion of Saving the World by Patrick Sale. I guess that's how his name is pronounced. At the end of this month, as you probably know by now, an extraordinary hoopla event will descend on Manhattan in the form of a climate action summit summoned by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to get the nations of the world finally to take seriously the threat of global warming and to pledge to actually take serious action to save the world from catastrophe. The chances of that happening are nil. Yes, there will be speeches and promises under increasing pressure from alarmed citizens, led by the enlightened youth of the world who know they will be the primary victims of the coming environmental disaster. Most national leaders will toss around ideas like carbon taxes, bans on coal mining and nuclear energy, building retrofitting renewable solar fuels, carbon dioxide entrapment, and net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Some will be willing to start doing something about one or another, while simultaneously asking for someone else to pay for the astronomical costs. By the way, all of these things that he's saying that they're going to talk about, all of these are just tinkering around the edges. They're not actually addressing like any of the actual root problems and or solutions. But the whole thing is an illusion. The problem is too big, the solution's too imperfect, and the timing, even if everything got fixed in a decade, is too late. Most scientists believe, with the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that if the Earth's temperature should increase by 2 degrees Celsius, the rise in sea levels would engulf 280 million people. Earthquakes could wipe out 17.6 million. And subsequent droughts and famines would result in another, that's a weird sentence, likely, I think he meant, result in another 231 million. Not to mention uncontrolled worldwide migrations, the collapse of many fragile states, and the threat of civil disorder throughout the developed world. This is why the last global climate gathering in Paris in 2015 set a goal of reducing global gas emissions enough by 2050 so as to avoid reaching a world temperature of 1.5 Celsius increase. This would mean reducing emissions by 45% by 2030 and virtually 100% by the target date, which would be 2050. That's not going to do it, guys. I got news for you. In fact, even if you reduce them to zero right now, we still won't stay below 1.5. Probably not, but we're going to have to do several things in order to even possibly keep ourselves from going over the cliff. And what is happening? Global gas emissions have increased every year for the last 20 years. And this is one of the facts that just, if anything is a nail in the coffin, in the climate change coffin, it's this, and it's really hard to get around this. And I even hear right-wingers use this against climate change activists, right? They're like, or liberals or whatever. These people have been trying to control our lives and, to save the environment. And what's happening? More environmental destruction. I don't know, as if they're tied together. That they're not. But anyways, with a record set in 2018, to which the U.S. contributed a record 3.4%. And at this rate, unless miracles occur, we'll reach 1.5 Celsius by 2030. Now, how about 2025? Anybody do I hear 2025? Anybody? 2 Celsius shortly thereafter. Here are two hard truths. In order to reach the Paris Accord goals, according to the IPCC, the world would need to see rapid and far-reaching changes in energy systems, immediate end of fossil fuels, and land use, agricultural land replanting with trees. Okay. So city layouts and transportation to reduce car use, buildings all retrofitted to renewable energy, vast reduction or elimination of road and air travel. Yes. And worldwide checks on human material consumption. Boom. That's what it would take. In other words, the end of capitalist civilization as we know it and its replacement by low energy, pre industrial, self sufficient, local and regional economies within a decade. At least this person knows exactly what the road is. At least this person spells out exactly what the road is. And that's a beautiful thing. And obviously most people, and he thinks, and we're not going to do that. And two, even those miracles would probably be too late. The 10 hottest years on Earth since quasi-global records began to be kept in 1850 have been between 2005 and 2019, and the hottest by far have been the last 5 years. July was the hottest month since record keeping began. Hot temperatures caused melting ice at the poles in Greenland and at glaciers worldwide, thus reducing reflection of sunlight back into the atmosphere and increasing the amount of that warms the surface. Melting permafrost layers release massive amounts of methane gas and far more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. Blah, 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 blah. The tragedy is that we have already increased temperatures so much and created conditions so that they will inevitably increase further. There is nothing that science or any United Nations mandate of any kind can do that will reduce temperatures in 10 years, period. It's sobering. Some sobering truths. Last year, an English scientist named Jem Bendell wrote a paper that shocked many of his fellow scholars by coming out and saying what everyone knew the data pointed to, but no one wanted to admit. He had devoted decades to sustainable development, he said, but had to conclude that the whole field of sustainable development research is based on the view that we can halt climate change and avert catastrophe. By returning to the science, I discovered that view is no longer tenable. And there was very little prospect that any kind of social change would save the world from an imminent environmental disaster and the likelihood of near-term societal collapse. It is still not a generally accepted scientific position, and its implications are so far-reaching that a great many people prefer simply to ignore it. His fellow scientists criticize it as excessively gloomy. Why must you gloom so? Which of course it is, but it is hardly surprising that in the last few years there have grown up several organizations that have confronted that truth head on. For example, something called the Near-Term Human Extinction Support Group started a Facebook group in 2013 and has since added a Near-Term Human Extinction Evidence Group, both flourishing, new material every day to comfort or discomfort their adherents. It's not necessary to side with the NTHers, but I would advise that you not fall into the delusions that will be offered in the next few days by the summitists. Interesting stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Another person saying like, nah, don't worry about it. Not going to happen. I'm not really, I don't know. I'm just still of the mind that, given all the odds, given all the facts, given all the percentages, given all the knowledge, given all the data points, given all the graphs, given the fact that all roads, all signs point to doom, we should still be talking, discussing, taking action, protesting, thinking about, what it is we could possibly do. I did watch an interesting interview on Hambone's channel with a guy, and darn if I can't remember his name, talking about the idea that we would have to get the military involved to actually do something about climate change. And I actually agree, as in, if a candidate, hopefully Bernie Sanders, or let's say, somebody who really took on the idea that climate change was our number one fundamental, I don't necessarily think that Bernie Sanders is, I think he's going to go far. If he is the president, he will go far in trying to, go down the road to fight climate change. I don't think even he is really ready to take on board the idea that we need to shut down industry, that we, although I wouldn't be surprised if he got there, if he could get there, because I think that mentally, I think he understands that we'd have to shut down, all kinds of industries. We'd have to, revert back to an agricultural society, and this is where the military comes in. You bring the troops home. You take all that huge military budget, which is gigantic, and you basically use the military as a retraining, regreening, redistribution force in order to totally combat climate change. And they would also have to be tasked with making sure people weren't violating certain things, certain laws or whatever. I mean, it would be slightly draconian, and that's where we're at. And I don't know if slightly is the best word or not, but probably majorly draconian. Who knows? But I mean, people would have to, But if we took the military and that budget and we used it for the powers of good, for remaking our entire economy or our entire, all of our entire system, it would take that kind of budget. It would take that kind of manpower, woman power. It would take everybody, all hands on deck. When people say all hands on deck, you need all hands on deck. But who knows? Who knows? That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.